services will always be remembered. Last Memorial Day, I was honored to join Commissioner Sterling and Mayor Walsh at the Puerto Rican Veterans Memorial in the South End with Chinatown veterans at their American Legion Post and the Carter Post as well on Blue Hill Avenue. African-American veterans, Latino, Asian veterans all have earned our respect. We have seen every community and neighborhood throughout the city stand up and serve our country. And as a society, let us ensure that we remember and honor them. Again, I want to thank Commissioner Sterling for her great work over the years in helping veterans. I also want to recognize the work of Mayor Walsh in helping and leading the way, really, on homeless veterans, providing housing for our homeless veterans, working closely with President Obama, Vice President Biden on this important initiative. I know they made great progress. Once again, thank you all for attending today. I look forward to having this hearing serve as an opportunity to highlight the wonderful work our city, state, and local organizations are doing. And for me, it's not just a hearing. It's something I would like to continue to work with Commissioner Sterling and have a hearing frequently so we can get some updates on what your organization is doing and what other people are doing. But more importantly, to make sure that we reach as many veterans as possible who might be homebound, who might read it on the newspaper, or pass it along some information. But it's important that we get our message out about the great services that are available for veterans. At this time, as I mentioned, City Councilor O'Malley and City Councilor McCarthy here. I'd like to ask City Councilor McCarthy if you'd like to make an opening statement. And before I do that, I'd just like to recognize City Council McCarthy's family for supporting and serving our country, including his father, who was a Vietnam veteran, U.S. Air Force, retired, and his son just signed up, enlisted in the military as well. So we're proud of the McCarthy family.
Oh, thank you very much, Councilor. No, I'm just here to support. My son is at Fort Benning as we speak, so yep, it's all good. So I'm just here to make sure, you know, clearly Eddie is taking the lead on this as a Navy vet himself, and you know, my family has served at length, and anything and everything that we can do as a body to make sure that the veterans are taken care of, that's certainly what we're going to do, and we'll continue to do so. So you're in good hands with Eddie, though, that's for sure.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor McCarthy. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioner Rob, Tom. Thank you all for your incredible services to the men and women who are joining us. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your service, and again, Councilor McCarthy, for your family's service. We are indebted to veterans and military families. No words, no programs will ever be able to adequately express what all of you have done and what it means to us, but just please rest assured that we sit here fully committed to do whatever we can to make sure that Boston and the Commonwealth provide the best opportunities for veterans and military families, and we're ready to work and help and support you just as you've always supported all of us. So looking forward. Thank you for calling this hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. And I just want to read a letter into the record. This is from City Councilor Edwards, co-chair of the committee as well, of the hearing. Thank you for holding a hearing on issues impacting the veteran community. I am pleased to co-sponsor this hearing order and regret that I am out of town at this time. As you know, veteran issues are deeply important to me, and my life has been shaped by my mother's experience as a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. I will look forward to reviewing the hearing and am grateful for the testimony provided. Please count on me as an ally in ensuring support for veterans in our communities. Lydia Edwards, City Councilor, District 1. At this time, I would like to ask, we're also joined by City Councilor Presley is joining us, and I'd like to ask if you'd like to make an opening statement, Councilor Presley.
Oh, very briefly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Councilors Flynn and Edwards for your leadership. You know, I think every single member of this council would say that we are committed to supporting our veterans. But certainly I have to say that that commitment has only been bolstered with the addition of Councilors Flynn and Edwards on this body, who are talking about veterans on every issue, not just some of the more, it's not only during Veterans Day or season, but year-round. And so I'm so grateful for their advocacy and for their voice. And I'll stop here because I'm losing mine. So I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you for what you do every day.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. And at this time, I'd like to recognize and introduce Commissioner Sterling.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn, both for your service to our country and your committed service to our community. Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Presley, thank you again for your commitment to our veterans, and the Council's Committee on City Neighborhood Services, Veterans and Military Affairs for inviting myself and my fellow colleagues, peers, and mentors in the veterans community to speak on the work that's being done to support our veterans and military families. While we all may operate under different organizations, titles, and scope of work, our mission in honoring and supporting our military veterans is the same. I've prepared a few remarks that outline the structure of our office and its role within the Veterans Network, along with highlighting resources, partnerships, and initiatives that address some of the challenges that the veterans community is facing, and I'd like to share with you that now. So the primary function of the Office of Veteran Services is to assist Boston's low-income veterans and their families, as well as veterans experiencing homelessness through a financial assistance program known as Chapter 115. Since the law's inception, shortly after the Civil War, every city and town in the Commonwealth must assign or appoint a Veterans Service Officer who oversees these benefits. We are joined today by some of our counterparts from the state who can offer additional insight on those resources, which include military burial assistance and subsidies on medical expenses. And to assist our clients beyond Chapter 115, we are also part of a coordinated access system that is an online portal, which we provide a warm handoff to some of the partnering organizations, many of which are in this room here today. As a city with deep military history and traditions, our Office of Veteran Services is involved in commemorated activities related to Boston's military community, such as Memorial Day placement, Pearl Harbor Day, the Prisoners of War and Missing in Action National Recognition Day, along with our service provider events, such as the Greater Boston Veterans Stand Down being hosted here next Friday, September 7th by the New England Center and Home for Veterans right here on City Hall Plaza. In addition to these traditions, the office has established a few traditions of its own with several signature events and programs aimed to engage, empower, and serve the veterans community. As Councilor Flynn mentioned earlier, every month between March and November for the past 3 years, we've organized a service project called Operation Thank a Vet, where volunteers hand-deliver resource packets to veterans and military families living in Boston. Within these packets are resources available to the veterans and their families and information on how to connect with services, including the Greater Boston Veterans Collaborative, which fosters a network of over 200 veteran service organizations, with members and leadership like Bob Notch from Brighton Marine and Dave Henke from the VA healthcare system also joining us here today. These packets also come along with a schedule of the mayor's coffee hours, upcoming health and human services events, and an invitation to the mayor's annual Veterans Welcome Home Breakfast, sponsored by the City of Boston Credit Union, where we recognize the contributions of the military and veterans community. While community engagement will remain a focus for the department, our priority will, going forward, explore opportunities to connect our veterans and military families to employment and educational resources, as well as anticipate the needs for services specific to women veterans, which is the fastest growing demographic in the veterans community. We're fortunate to have the Massachusetts Women's Veterans Network, headquartered here in Boston, who have grown a sisterhood that has been meeting every year for the past 10 years for a conference that provides services, workshops, and a strong sense of community. And we're joined by Carolyn Mason-Holy today as well from the network's steering committee. While this is a snapshot of some of the services within the office, And there are other larger initiatives that Mayor Walsh has committed the administration to, including the challenge to end veterans' homelessness, led by the Department of Neighborhood Development. While the city has ended chronic veterans' homelessness, there is still work to be done. We still need landlords willing to house previously homeless individuals and more community partners like Brighton Marine and Mass Housing making groundbreaking efforts in building over 100 units of veterans housing on their campus. Veterans and military families also need to be reminded of some of the lesser-known benefits, such as the Welcome Home Bonus offered by the state's Treasurer's Office and the city's tax abatement offered here at City Hall. While I can speak generally about these programs, I would like to offer the rest of my time to have the representative from our partnering organizations talk about the specifics of these benefits and how they can be accessed to any of the veterans who may be watching or listening here today. And I'll close my remarks by adding that we have a strong network of dedicated organizations with good leadership doing the right things for our veterans. And I'd like to thank them all for being here as well, including Tom Lyons here to my right and my Deputy Commissioner as well from the City of Boston. Thank you again, Councilor, for the opportunity, and we look forward to continuing this conversation as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. And we are joined by Deputy Commissioner Robert Santiago. Deputy Commissioner, I don't know if you want to make any comments or...
First of all, I will thank you, Councilor Flynn, for having this hearing for the veterans of the City of Boston, and Councilor O'Malley, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Persley, and Councilor Wu for also attending. If I can, I just wanted to go over a couple of numbers from our last fiscal year that we had through our office. We had over 2,600 walk-in clients, the veterans that came into our office. We responded to over 10,300 calls and also responded to over 3,300 emails. Now, that may seem like a lot. That's definitely a number that we would like to see in the office grow. And having this platform, having this forum here is definitely a step closer to ensuring that all our veterans in the City of Boston are taken care of and know that they have services through our office. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I also know that you're retired from the U.S. Navy as well, so thank you for your service, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, shipmate.
Next, we have Tom Lyons, Vice President, External Affairs, Mass Housing, United States Marine, Vietnam veteran, active in helping so many veterans, not only here in Boston, but across the country, whether it's housing, job training. He was active with the New England Center for Homeless Veterans, was the Deputy Commissioner of Veteran Services for the City of Boston as well, someone that's respected for his longtime support of veterans and military families. Thank you, Tom, for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the council, for being here today, and thanks for allowing me to say just a few words about how important today is as this council, the city, and Commissioner Sterling continue to move forward to improve the lives of our veterans. As you said, Mr. Chairman, I've been around a while. I've been part of the veterans community now for going on 36 years, certainly as Deputy Commissioner for the City of Boston, Executive Director at the New England Center for Homeless Veterans, and 16 years at Mass Housing, helping to create housing for veterans. And across that landscape, I've really understood at each step of the way how important it is for veterans to have people who they can go to, who they can talk to help them assist in so many areas. But housing is one that really, for me, hit home when I became the executive director at the center. And it was frustrating when we had a veteran who had successfully completed programs at the facility, and we were standing on the curb waiting for the families or loved ones to pick them up, and they struggled with where they were going to go. Housing certainly continues to be a major issue for veterans, let alone veterans who have to call a shelter home. A great statesman once said that people need not so much be informed as they need to be reminded. And I think today, we are going to be reminding the council and the city that programs and services are critical to our men and women who are not only coming home from 2 wars, but in my case, certainly veterans who are aging in place. Certainly the Vietnam veterans are becoming those older veterans. And I want to bring to the council's attention that we do have certain things in place that I think could help. One particularly, I think, when it comes to public housing, we do have a preference in state housing for veterans. And it's one, I think, that sometimes gets lost in the day-to-day, trying to place veterans into housing. But it's one area, I think, public housing, particularly here in the city, can be a place where veterans may be able to be placed using their service time. I spoke about aging in place. There are so many programs available now that veterans can take advantage of, both in the nonprofit community as well as the city, to be able to age in place and the families being able to take care of them so they're not placed in a home, whether it's a nursing home or in a long-term care facility. The other area that I would suggest that the council think about and look at, it is when it comes to employment. We all know, being a police officer and a firefighter, if that's what you want, it's available and you have a veteran's preference. Not everybody wants to be a police officer or a firefighter. I think there's some good opportunities within the city if a young man, woman coming home from the service has and wants to work for the city, should be able to use that veteran's preference to help them get into a good paying job at the city, particularly where they have to live. And so I just want to throw that out to the council to think about when it comes to hiring within the city. As I said, not everybody wants to be a police officer or a firefighter. So I'll just close my remarks as I'm here today just to be a voice, but also someone who has, as I said, over the course of his time in the veterans community, has seen how active involvement helps veterans' independence, improve their quality of life, and be able to live here in the great city of Austin. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We're also joined by my colleague, City Councilor Michelle Wu. Councilor Wu, would you like to make an opening statement?
Mr. Chairman, and say thank you to all of you for the work that you do and everyone that you represent. I'm very excited that we are formally examining all of these services and looking at how we can continue growing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. At this time, we can open it up to questions, starting with the Commissioner. Commissioner, I know you highlighted housing, the important role of making sure that our veterans have access to housing following a deployment. I know the great work the mayor has done in helping returning veterans, especially homeless veterans, access housing. What other steps could the city take, or could the residents take, to work closely with your office or with the city leaders or state leaders or federal leaders to highlight the important need for housing for returning veterans, whether it's here in Boston or across the state?
Sure. I think a lot of the groundwork has been laid out in the mayor's commitment, definitely in ending veterans' homelessness, and the plan put in place with Boston's Way Home. I think as that continues to evolve, it may also propose some opportunity for veteran preference housing as well. I mean, we look at the great example that Brighton Marine is setting at this point in time. They did a groundbreaking where they're opening up about a little over 100 units there. So maybe examining the pipeline of how we are interacting with our transitioning veterans and how we're connecting them with the housing that's becoming more and more available to them.
Do we still see a lot of returning veterans coming to Boston without housing? Are they Boston residents, or are they a lot of veterans that are coming to the city from various parts of the country seeking opportunities here in the city, or what are you seeing in that regard?
I can't necessarily speak to the numbers in general. I can say there's a trend because veterans that are returning do come with educational benefits, and we have some really great educational institutions right here in the city of Boston that they're taking advantage of those opportunities, but being able to assist them in finding housing would be something that we can explore as well.
I had the opportunity to join you and several of your staff, but a lot of volunteers in Operation Thank a Vet. I know you've done that for several years now. Could you highlight that program? It's informing veterans of the benefits that they earn in military families as well. From my experience, knocking on a door and saying thank you for their service, it was almost the first time a lot of these older veterans actually heard those words. So I just want to compliment your staff for taking the initiative on this important program. But what are the results of Operation Thank a Vet?
Sure. We found, I think, that the veterans community is definitely a high-touch, high-trust community. So ensuring that we're taking the necessary steps to make that we're engaging with our veterans on a face-to-face basis in a regular cadence has proven to be successful. So far, it's completely volunteer based, and we've reached a little over 3,500 homes and included at least 357 new volunteers. So not only is this a way for us to connect with our veterans, but it's also an opportunity for our non-veterans to open dialogue with our veterans and understand some of the needs that they're looking for as far as engaging with our community.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before I open up to my colleagues, I'll ask one more question to Tom. Tom, I know you've been active on the VASH program for many years, helping veterans with housing. Could you describe the VASH program and what are some of the challenges facing the city or the state or the federal government, or more importantly, to a veteran that is trying to access that program?
Sure. The VASH program is a HUD VA voucher that would allow someone who's been chronically homeless to be able to access an apartment, similar to a Section 8. I think the issue over the years in working with Sheila Dillon has been trying to educate landlords about the VASH program. Unfortunately, and it's something that I've seen over the time I was at the center, was people don't hear the word veteran because we use the word homeless first. But if we were to talk with a landlord and say, we have a veteran who's been formerly homeless and he has an opportunity now, or she has an opportunity now to turn their life around and get back to the community as a productive citizen, I think that goes a long way for that individual hopefully getting a place to live. But unfortunately, homeless veteran seems to connect in so many ways because it tends to bring in money if you're a nonprofit. And for me, I always try to change that dynamic when I was at the center to get people to talk with. These are veterans. These are men and women who served the country and unfortunately find themselves in this situation. So the education, if you will, of landlords to understand a little bit more about what this VASH program is, how it's helping the individual, and unlike a Section 8, this certificate comes with some case management, so the individual isn't just placed in a community, put in a situation of being potentially failing, but rather with the support systems around him or her and having case management, a case manager, the likelihood of that individual being successful becomes very high.
Tom, as a follow-up to, I guess, Commissioner Sterling, one of her comments, you work closely with the mayor on Brighton Marine mass housing. It's an excellent development plan, excellent housing opportunities. I know wind development was also part of it. Do you think there's an opportunity to build more housing like that across Boston using public-private partnerships and having a great location such as that, but having several of these locations throughout Boston? I had the opportunity to visit Brighton Marine. It's excellent, and I'd love to see more of that type of housing built.
You know, actually, you know, I think this would be a model for the city to look at. You know, full disclosure, being a board member of Bright Marine and also being an employee at Mass Housing, I had to kind of walk that fine line, making sure that I separated myself from certain aspects of that project. But it's one that, as a board member of Bright Marine, I am so proud of. Our CEO, our board taking that step to create and build veterans housing. We haven't built veterans housing in this city, in this Commonwealth, since World War II. Many of the public housing developments were built for the returning veteran. So the Bright Marine project is one that I think the city can and should look at as how you bring the public-private partnership to the table and start looking at space that may be available to actually create real veterans housing, where you have veterans who will be living there that may have a VASH certificate. You may have a veteran who's living there who's a police officer, firefighter, teacher, and you may have a veteran who has retired and now just wants to have a downsize and now wants to have a nice place to live. So it's a great example of what kind of housing can and should be built.
Commissioner Sterling, do you have any comments on the role of, future Brighton Marine projects that we might see, long-term in the city?
No, I'd just like to echo what Tom was saying. It's a great model, and it's something we should definitely explore and seek other opportunities like it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to open it up to my colleagues on the council. Councilor O'Malley? Councilor McCarthy.
I'm still Councilor McCarthy.
Or you just call me Tim.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And my question's pretty short and sweet. I coached football for a long time, so a lot of the young men that I've coached have entered into the military service, and now a lot of them are coming back. What is your best advice as far as banking, as far as, low interest loans, pre-quals, things like that? Because ultimately, at some point in time, Dolan's going to come back from, Fort Benning or wherever he goes, and he's either going to go in my basement or he's going to be pre-qualled and get a house and move along. And I'd rather have him not in my basement. He's been down there a lot.
Well, working at Mass Housing, it's a good opportunity to plug the agency. We have a great home ownership program where we insist on first-time home buyers get a home buyer education. And we also, interesting enough, have a great program for veterans, Operation Welcome Home. It's a program that we partner with the not agencies, but the banks and credit unions throughout the Commonwealth, where we provide down payment assistance, and we provide what I think is probably the most unique part of our Operation Welcome Home. We provide insurance that if the veteran is called to active duty, or if the veteran loses their job, we'll pay their principal and interest for 6 months. For me, when we created this program, I saw firsthand and heard firsthand veterans who were called up, either National Guard or Reserve, who maybe their company didn't make up the difference between the military pay and the pay they were getting, and were leaving not knowing what the home front was going to be like in terms of, paying for that mortgage. So we created at Mass Housing this safety net that we would put in place MI Plus insurance that would ensure that our men and women who were going off didn't have to worry about their homes while they were away. And yet, at the same time, veterans coming home who were working and may have lost their job because of a shutdown or whatever it may be, we would cover them for the 6 months as well. So Mass Housing has some great programs. I would recommend to your son when he comes home to really check out Mass Housing and the first-time homebuyers programs that we have there.
Yeah, I'll certainly send him that way. Is there a way that we know when Boston residents come back? Is there something that's triggered, or is it just kind of, because your example earlier was perfect. Like, people need to be reminded. It's a great quote. Is there a way that triggers, so when he does get back and comes back to Hyde Park, is there something that says, all right, he's out, he's a Boston resident, get him this information?
Sure. So we work with the state. It actually gets flagged when that does occur, and we get notified there too. They'll get a letter talking about some of the welcome home bonuses that's available to them there, and then we'll go out and reach out to them as well.
All right, that's awesome. I'll be calling you in 3 years.
All right.
3 years, 13 weeks, apparently, unless he re-ups, so you never know.
I'll be retired, I just want to know. So.
That's right. I'll still find you.
Councilor O'Malley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of quick questions I want to go through. There's a very terrific, comprehensive overview. And I was glad, Commissioner, you began talking about the fastest-growing network, our female veterans. A couple of years ago, our dear friend and my new JP constituent, whom we stole from South Boston, Coleman Nee, and I did a great event at the Lauren Greenough House for Veterans Day for returning female veterans and servicewomen, and it was really well-attended and worthwhile. I think, I don't know this definitively, but I would have to venture a guess that I probably represent the only city council district in America that has 2 VA hospitals, and I've been proud to work closely with our incredible staff at both Jamaica Plain and West Roxbury. Commish, when we were last at the West Roxbury VA, we were there with Elizabeth Dole for the announcement of the Hidden Heroes campaign that Boston has been chosen. So can you talk a little bit about that great program? Any of you that want to maybe are familiar with it, it seems like it's great, particularly as we talk about, I think, Tommy, you were talking about aging in place and as Vietnam-era vets start to get a little bit older.
Sure. I think we're very fortunate to have such great medical facilities for our veterans here in Boston, and the partnership that came up to really highlight not just our veterans but our caregivers is extremely important too. So when the opportunity came up to become a Hidden Heroes city, we definitely embraced that, and I think it's something that will definitely flagged our efforts to continue to support our families and caregivers as well. Yeah, there's I think we have, I know I can't speak specifically to some of the other programs around that, but I know we have Carolyn Mason-Holy from the VA, who we were just talking earlier about the fantastic women veteran services in JP especially. They've done a phenomenal job in building out that program. I'm personally a user as well and have run into women who have come on through across the country just to go to the JPVA because it is a 5-star facility. So we're very fortunate to have that here in Boston.
Oh, that's great to hear. Wonderful. Rob, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that if I learn one thing on Perry Mason, it's to ask a question that you know the answer to. So I'm a huge proponent of Thank-A-Vet. When will Thank-A-Vet take place in West Roxbury?
Oh, thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Actually, it's going to be taking place October 13th.
Fantastic.
And just to continue talking about the VA, it's actually going to be hosted by the VA in West Roxbury.
Right.
More information will follow, and I'll make sure, sir, to get that.
Yeah, any way I can be helpful, my office can be helpful. We're ready and at your service. It's just a wonderful thing, and we're very excited. Thank you for that.
And also, if I just may say, we actually have an Operation Thank-A-Vet also next Saturday in the South End, Back Bay neighborhoods, and that'll be at the BCY of Blackstone.
Great. So have you been in once you conclude West Roxbury, will you have been in every neighborhood?
Correct.
That's
Wonderful.
correct.
That's great. And then
And
it
we're just
starts
gonna
all
circle
over again.
around. That's right.
Excellent, that's great.
We start in March to November. So we do
Which
it
neighborhood has the most veterans? South Boston?
Dorchester.
Dorchester, of course, yeah.
Dorchester.
Great. Tommy, you mentioned something I think that's really interesting that I hadn't thought of. You talk about jobs, sort of the bigger issues, housing, jobs, the non-public safety jobs. Those are great jobs. So many of our incredibly talented policemen and women, firefighters come from the service. But has the city ever done, or maybe the city in collaboration with the state, a job fair specifically for veterans, for potential job opportunities within city or state government that aren't necessarily, in the public safety realm?
I believe there's been many job fairs being held both at the city or state level and even in the nonprofit world. I think we're, and I say this, I don't know it 100%, but I think sometimes when these job fairs are done, they're done because people feel good that they're having a job fair. But how many jobs are actually being made available to these men and women? That's what, I kind of get a rub against, is that, yeah, it feels good. We all feel good when we're trying to do something, but if you're going to come to the table with something. Come to the table saying that we have these many openings and we're looking for, and then I think you'll see the real success of the job fairs. Again, we all want to feel good. We all want to pat it back. Thanks for doing something. But I think when we're talking about men and women coming out of the military with the great experience and training that they have, there's got to be a place for these men and women to work both at a city and or a state level.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more. And maybe that could be an opportunity, Mr. Chair, through your leadership of having a specific city and state and county sort of public sector job fair where we could actually be able to record that data, how many jobs are offered, how many applications come, and make sure that we don't limit it only to public safety. So appreciate those.
I can say as a Marine, not everybody in the Marine Corps is a trigger puller. That we do have men and women that have worked on, in mechanics and worked in computers and have worked in the various fields that it takes to make any organization great. So there are some very telling and qualified people coming out of all of our military services.
Good, good. Well, thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize, I do have to leave, but I'll review the rest of this at a later time. Thank you all, and happy Labor Day.
Thank you, Council.
Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Presley?
Nothing. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you all for being here and echoing the words of my colleague, Councilor O'Malley, for your robust and comprehensive testimony. Was looking through the packet, so encouraged to see that we have growing resources to meet all the unique needs of our veterans and military families, unique to women, to the LGBT community, those looking to maintain their sobriety, and I'm sure there are many more that are not included in this packet that we're not aware of. I wanted to ask about what your relationship is with our VFW posts and how many we have, and are those kept alive only by private donations? What is the state of them? What is your partnership with them? And how many exist within the city of Boston?
So I feel like that number is varying because they are having a membership challenge from the ones that we interact with. Every year we go out and do our flag placement for Memorial Day, and in the past we've relied heavily on our VFW and American Legion posts to assist us in that work. Because they are, a lot of their membership is aging. It's difficult for them to do that work, so we are pulling in the JROTC units and getting the youth involved there as well. But there are still posts that are active. I can think of 1018 VFW police post and the Carter post as well. And bringing some awareness to some of the needs that they're looking at as well. So I can't speak exactly to the exact number at this point.
Do you think less than 10?
No, it's
Less than
No, it's more
5?
than-
I would say less than 20.
Less than 20, okay. All right. And, one of the reasons, to your point, so this is my next question, is about what we're doing to foster that intergenerational community building. I've heard from a number of younger vets that they don't support the post because sometimes they feel unwelcome, or they just don't feel that there's, I just think they want us, so how can we foster that intergenerational community building and make sure we are meeting the unique needs of our younger veterans as well?
I think that's a great question, Counselor. It's one that, as a Vietnam veteran, I struggled with when I came home and was somewhat reluctant to join the VFW or the Legion, whatever post it may be. And it's one, I think, the question, I think it speaks to how the organizations have to change. I think, and again, I can say this because I'm old enough and have seen enough that we have to start having programs that will then be of interest for the younger veterans to join. No longer is it a place to go and have a cheap beer and have a cigarette and sit and tell war stories. I mean, those are bygone years. And I think what the traditional organizations have to do is really think about how do we change in a way that encourages these young men and women to join and to keep these posts viable. So, yeah, I think it's a culture change within the organization itself. I think many of the posts now, I think the Vietnam guys may be the majority of the people there. And many of the Vietnam guys know the struggles we had when we tried to join some of these posts and were hit with the typical, stereotypes that were placed on us as returning veterans. So I think, I think it's a challenge that the traditional organizations really have to struggle with and take on.
So that was my thank you, Tommy. And I've known you since I worked for John Kerry. You've always been a truth teller. You tell it just like it is. Don't
I
ever
try
change.
to.
We appreciate it. But Commissioner, so to that end, are veterans at the table when it comes to the developing of programming, and how can we make sure that, is there an advisory council? How are they appointed or selected to that? How long do they serve on it? Do they make recommendations and offer a report? Is that intergenerationally diverse, racially, sexual orientation?
So aside from the traditional posts, I think a lot of the returning veterans, especially from Iraq and Afghanistan, have developed newer programs that kind of call to the needs that they're looking for. So they're looking to be physically active. So there's an organization called Team Red, White, and Blue. So primarily some of our younger generation coming back, or they're very mission orientated. Capitalizing on the skill set that they've had in the military. Now they're taking that into the communities with organizations such as the Mission Continues. So while there are several of these different organizations, we do have a collaborative that does get together and kind of talk about the challenges surrounding these organizations and figuring out how we're filling those gaps. The Greater Boston Veterans Collaborative actually meets every other month and has been pretty regularly for the past 3 years. And at the table, there are organizations just like Team Red, White, and Blue, Team Rubicon, and a few other the newer organizations. Okay.
Did anyone else have anything to add on that? Okay. All right. And just one more thing, Mr. Chairman, and then I'll wrap here. So just very quickly, a statement. I just wanted to encourage us to, if we're not already intentionally, to engage the arts community. I think it's a very accessible way for folks to build community, to get the healing that they need, not even, oftentimes even aware. It's not as obvious as go to a counselor. Mm-hmm. But just to be participating in events relative to arts and culture. So if that's not a partnership that we already have, I would just encourage that, whether it's concerts or maybe the museum gives a discount if you're a veteran for a specific day. You can bring your family, something like that. The last thing is on the on professional pathways, just picking up on the line of questioning from my colleague and friend, Councilor O'Malley. And I didn't hear all of the answer, excuse me, because I was taking copious notes on something else. But what do we see as the most viable pathways outside of public safety for returning veterans? Are there industries that are dominated by them that are also our most reliable industries here? So, healthcare, or, perhaps being an engineer, what could we do to strengthen those pathways, or, short of, I don't know, earmarking a certain percentage of jobs or something, as we are considering for other groups, but what could we
I
do?
think one way, Council, would be to, educate some of the companies, corporations, even at a city level, to educate them as to how to understand and read a DD 214 when a young man or woman who's coming out of the military and is sitting in front of them applying for a job. And a DD 214 gives you this somewhat of a history of their time in the military.
I see.
But understand a little bit more of the quality of the individual who is sitting there with you, who has 3, 4, maybe 8 years in the military, whether it's at an administrative level or is at a leadership level. I mean, there's qualities that the individual is bringing to the table that I think is so
That are
often
transferable.
very transferable
Yeah.
and so often overlooked.
Okay,
And I think it's a informational kind of a process that I think has to happen, and people need to kind of recognize that there is a learning process to that. The flip side of that would be, for the young men and women coming home, how to sell themselves, how to talk about their experience, whether it was being a squad leader and taking care of 8 or 10 men, and what that leadership skill entailed. So it's, maybe it's a dual track, but
Okay.
it's one that I think needs to happen in a way that, can really put these young men and women coming home in the best possible position to get employment.
excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Wu?
Thank you. My colleagues have had great questions, so I've learned so much already. I just had one sort of set or topic, pushing more on the intergenerational line. We've heard a lot about various generations within the veterans and military families community, and all the resources available. We want to keep expanding opportunities for returning veterans. So just thinking about what are the ways in which our veterans who are role models are interacting with our young people, either in Boston schools or elsewhere in the community, to make sure that our school-aged kids are getting exposure to these role models, learning about the opportunities that this pathway might open up for them down the line, as we are continuing to strengthen those pathways and make sure there are more and more opportunities.
Sure, I know the JRTC programs are continuing to look for support there, but there are also organizations such as I can think of the Travis Manion Foundation, who has a Character Does Matter program, where they have veterans who are talking about their colleagues or someone who was influential to them in the service and sharing their story with our youth. The other thing that we're doing through our office specifically, and I think all the councilors here know about the Hero Square programs. So we have about 1,200 Hero Squares within the city of Boston, and we are adding a plaque to each of them, so it's not just the name. Now you're getting the story behind that person and the neighborhood that they came from and impacted. Through the summer, we're having our summer internships interns come on in and help us develop those biographies. So they're getting an understanding of the heroes that are within the neighborhoods and the ones that are part of the history of Boston as well.
Will those be available online too, just all together?
Yes, so within those biographies, there's a QR code, so any passerby can actually scan it and it'll go on to an online memoriam. And we're in the process of geolocating all of those on our city website.
Are there any?
If I can make a
please.
recommendation, Council, I would also say Boston is so unique in ways of how each community recognizes service and sacrifice by the men and women who grew up in that community. And we have memorials really that dot the landscape of this city. And it, you know, it would be my thought that maybe some schools that are close by where there's a memorial should have a day when one or two classes go to that memorial, see the names on that memorial, and hear the stories of the individuals who are on there, and that may give them a little sense of the service and sacrifice that so many from that community gave in all our wars.
That's a great idea, and I mean, not to add more work to the commissioner's office. What do you think it's the timeline looks reasonable to get through the 1,200 hero squares in the near future, and there'd be opportunity to add more of the other types of memorials and statues, or is the 1,200 already a project that's laid out for a while?
I feel like it's something that we can envelop into the current project, so that wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, great. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. And I guess the final question, Tom, I just want to, you know, next week is the rededication of the South Boston Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Why is that a significant, important day in our community?
Well, and thanks for that, the opportunity to talk a little bit about it, Councilor. Back in 1978, I organized a breakfast to remember two of my best friends that were killed in Vietnam in '68. And it struck me from that breakfast and celebration we had afterwards, how important it was for those families to know that people still remembered and cared about their son. And so it got me thinking about how many other families in the town have lost someone. And it turned out South Boston lost 25 young men in Vietnam between 1967 and 1969. And so I organized a committee, and we got together and went through the process of which your dad was so helpful. And we built a memorial to the 25 men from the town. And what I'm proud of that, but I'm equally proud of the fact that for 37 years this year, every year we've gone back and remembered our 25 friends. We've gone back and saluted the men and women who served during that time frame. And it was a commitment we made back in 1981, and it's one that, as I said, I'm extremely proud of, that we continue to do it for the 37th time on Sunday, September 9th. And this year we're dedicating our day to Senator John McCain, who we all know just passed. But I think as a Vietnam veteran and someone from that generation, it's important that we continue to remember the men like John McCain that have come home and served his country and continue to serve long after his time in the military. So we'll have our ceremony at 11:30 at Medal of Honor Park, and once again we'll remember and pay respects to our friends.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to the Commissioner. Thank you to the Deputy Commissioner. It was an honor to have all three of you here to testify. I want to thank you for your service to our city, to our veterans, to our military families, and I'm proud to work with all three of you. So I just want to say thank you for your time today, but more importantly for what you do for our veterans across the city. At this time, I'm going to dismiss this panel. We'll take a brief recess, and then we'll get ready for the second panel. We're in brief recess.
I'm Bill Davidson, the Director of Vet Outreach for Home Base, and this is the video that you're going to see. It's a 4-minute video. I just want to let you know what it is.
Thank you, Bill.
Veterans put their life on the line to protect our freedoms. It's our responsibility as a city and a nation to be there for our heroes when they come home.
I don't think any of us come back the same person. We are all changed by what we go through. Physical wounds have taken their toll, and we're still learning about the invisible ones, and I think those are probably the greater threat to my generation coming back because they're so misunderstood.
Home Base, a Red Sox Foundation and Massachusetts General Hospital program, works to heal the invisible wounds of war for veterans, service members, and their families. Invisible wounds such as post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, co-occurring substance use disorders, anxiety, and depression. Home Base offers treatment in their Boston-based clinic for invisible wounds, including couples therapy, support groups, and education. They treat their patients holistically, offering wellness and fitness programs to promote overall health, free weekend activities to strengthen family bonds, and classes to strengthen the mind-body connection.
I have to give the Red Sox leadership, particularly Tom Warner, credit for the inspiration to create a program like this, and we were flattered back then to partner with them to create this program.
Mass General is the #1 psychiatric hospital in the world, and we're very proud of what we've done, but we're just on our way.
In the fall of 2018, Home Base will open a National Center of Excellence in the Charlestown Navy Yard. Inside the state-of-the-art building, Home Base will double the amount of patients they serve.
We put all this time and effort as a country into helping somebody prepare for battle, but we don't necessarily figure out as a nation what the path back to civilian life is all about. More than anybody else who's trying to figure out how to help these men and women find their way home, Home Base gets it.
Leveraging local and national partnerships and building on the expertise of world-class institutions such as Massachusetts General Hospital, Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital, and Harvard Medical School, Home Base is changing the landscape of care for the 21st century veteran and military family.
I was just 2 days removed from the battlefield when I landed in my living room. There was no transition, no help. I felt like I didn't belong in the place I called home. I reached out for help, but no one seemed to understand. I just wanted out. I wanted to die. I couldn't take the pain anymore. I came to Home Base. And I talked about those things in that box that I'd stuffed so deep down that were torturing me. I'd lost all emotion related to my trauma. But slowly, Home Base got me to feel again. Home Base is my second family. Because they took a broken man who didn't want to live and treated not only my PTSD, but my entire body.
World-class clinical care, innovative wellness programs, education initiatives, and cutting-edge research to develop new treatments. This is Home Base.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that presentation and video. I had the opportunity to attend the Home Base program recently at Fenway Park. They had a run to Home Base. The mayor was there, Mayor Walsh, and Governor Baker was there as well. But looking forward to the opening in Charlestown. But I do know that home base is doing some excellent work across our state. So we just want to say thank you for all that you guys are doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are pretty proud of our program, and we are a national program now for the last 2 years, taking service members from all over the country and their families. That's why we're going to be able to double our care now when we get to Charlestown. So great resource for our local veterans as well. We have the outpatient clinic. Will be also in Charlestown.
Perfect. Jesse Flynn, member of the DAV here in Boston, also a Boston firefighter, a good friend we're very proud of. What's the latest that the DAV is seeing of returning veterans? What's their biggest issue? But also, what are you seeing from some of the older veterans that are disabled? How are they accessing their VA care? What are some of the challenges? What are you seeing in that regard?
So employment's always a big issue with us, and we have a job fair today. I know we have 98 exhibitors. That's partnered with Recruit Military and our national organization, brings that into town. We've done multiple job fairs at Gillette. It's a little different, and I've been to it a couple of times, and I was wary of job fairs myself, as it was talked about earlier, but this one seems to, be offering some real positions, including at Encore. Boston Harbor has a pretty good program at that job fair, looking to hire veterans, and they've been, a good resource for us to send veterans that are looking for employment. But employment's always a big issue, and disability compensation and VA healthcare, and getting access to those two things is something that we've always focused on since our inception in 1920, and something that continues to challenge veterans that come home today. Our National Service Office in the JFK building serves, hundreds of veterans a year. I think I have a couple numbers here from 2016, but the numbers, haven't dropped or increased in any significant amount. But in 2016, they represented 4,982 Massachusetts veterans before the Veterans Administration for disability compensation, and they obtained over $87 million in retroactive compensation payments. So they do a great job up there, and sometimes that's the first step to get guys, involved in the VA healthcare system, so that not only are they getting that disability rating and compensation, but they start getting treatment at our VA facilities. And with the older generation, the Korean War veterans, World War II veterans that we still have with us, the Korean War veterans and Vietnam veterans, transportation to and from medical appointments is a big issue. That's probably our biggest program within the Department of Massachusetts. Is we provide free of charge transportation to and from VA medical facilities for healthcare treatment by appointment. We've purchased over 65 vans since 1987, logged over 10 million miles in the state, transporting veterans to and from those medical appointments. And that's something that we're always trying to fund and keep going. And in Boston, we have transportation programs at both the Jamaica Plain and West Roxbury hospitals. So,
Thank you, Jesse. And I should have mentioned at the beginning, if maybe we'll go through the panel, if you could say your name, your organization, and title. That'd be helpful, so we can start with you.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Dillon. I'm a member of the Veteran Outreach Team at the Home Base Program.
And Kevin, if you also want to give an opening statement.
No, I would just really like to say thank you for you putting this on, and just really kind of coming together and just learning more about what other organizations are up to. It's great to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bob Notch. I'm with Brighton Marine. I'm the Program Development Officer there. And I do have a bit of an opening statement, if I wanted to. Okay. Since the early 80s, Brighton Marine has been a trusted and quiet partner in the service of uniformed service members, veterans, and their families. This support primarily focused on the long-standing partnership with the U.S. Family Health Plan in providing top-tier health care to eligible members, a substantial scholarship to qualifying senior and junior ROTC, a provider of labor and donated landscaping essentials for our local neighborhood, and strong financial donations to area nonprofits and local youth activities. In early 2017, as the vision of creating affordable housing for all veterans became attainable, Bright Marine embarked on a mission to rebrand and focus efforts on becoming highly visible to the service member and veteran community, as well as those who serve them. Our goal is to create a veteran network community, a connected community for service providers and those they serve, uniformed service members, veterans, and their families. Our main efforts today are partnership with U.S. Family Health Plan, the alternative to TRICARE in this region, residences at Bright Marine, which we talked about briefly earlier, which is under construction right now in partnership with Wind Companies to provide 102 units of affordable housing with veterans preference. Resources at Bright Marine. Our goal is to be a first stop, a physical hub of multiple service providers for military veterans and their families. The Greater Boston Coordinated Veterans Services, already established. It's a virtual network of coordinated care providers serving military veterans and their families, creating no wrong door for veterans and a warm handoff between service providers. The website for this is coordinatedvetservices.org, and we can be reached at 888-887-3107. We also have a homeless veterans housing fund, which is a supplement to the HUD-VASH voucher, and it breaches the obstacles for those approved for HUD-VASH vouchers to receive keys to their new front door. And we have the Arthur Berg Leadership Scholarship, which is $5,000 of scholarship funds awarded to a senior in junior ROTC who is graduating in one of the Boston public schools. I'm also co-chair of the Greater Boston Veterans Collaborative, and Commissioner Sterling mentioned that organization earlier, an organization of over 200 public, private, corporate, and nonprofit providers that are all serving veterans in the community. And we're continuing to grow that network and find ways to fill the gaps that we identify and reduce some of the redundancies. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Daniel?
Am I on here? Hello, Councilor Flynn, Councilor McCarthy. Appreciate you having me here. My name is Daniel Brennan. I'm the Director of Special Populations Programs and Services at Department of Veteran Services. I oversee a unique program called SAVE. It stands for Statewide Advocacy for Veterans Empowerment. It was launched in 2008. It's a collaboration between Department of Public Health and Department of Veteran Services. This resulted in an interagency collaboration that includes funding, program management, resources, and clinical support. The SAVE team also receives funding from Massachusetts Department of Mental Health and the trial court, Massachusetts trial court, to provide peer support for our veterans in the Commonwealth who are struggling with issues regarding the judicial system and accessing help that way. We do proactive outreach in the community. It SAVE's mission, providing awareness in suicide prevention, mental health awareness, advocacy for veterans benefits, and services are a top priority for SAVE. Our outreach coordinators are completely mobile and can meet with our veterans in the community. The goal is to empower our veterans to navigate the system of benefits and services to them and their families. Everyone on the team, they are mobile. They all are outfitted with the equipment they need. They meet with veterans in the community, local Dunkin' Donuts at their house, and help access their with services. The SAVE team is comprised of veterans and family members. The key component of the SAVE team is peer-to-peer support. So everyone on the team are veterans or family members, and a lot of these members have struggled with some of the same issues that the clients that they're working with. We also have our peers broken out by county. So every regional area has an outreach coordinator that will be out in the community, be at the local events, resources, whatever it may be, and help them connect to services. We also have a family outreach coordinator. She works with all our family members. She helps connect them to services, family support groups, that sort of thing. Also, because the team are peers and not clinicians or doctors, and we are a suicide prevention program, so we deal with a lot of high risk. We consult with Riverside Community Care, which helps us with any clinical advice or backing when dealing with clients who may be after hours or may need immediate services. So the SAVE team works with all generations of veterans with a special emphasis placed on recently returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. Veterans are assessed for mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress, suicide ideation, traumatic brain injury, and substance abuse. SAVE outreach coordinators create an individual action plan to help the veteran address and resolve key issues that prevent the veteran's post-traumatic growth. From this assessment, the veteran is referred to the appropriate service provider based upon the veteran's needs. A lot of times these veterans are sent to local VSOs, for instance, which every city town has one. They offer resources and benefits. That's a quick access point for the veterans in the Commonwealth. Some of the collaborations we've done over the years, we helped with the Smoking Cessation program for veterans and families, resulting in 4,000 veterans and families members taking their first steps to quit smoking. We worked closely with the BSAS, Bureau of Substance Abuse Services, substance abuse prevention for veterans and military families. We do a lot of presentations, trainings, that sort of thing with them. Since February of 2008 to February 2017, we've outreached to over 30,000 veterans. 5,000 of those veterans, or over 5,000 of those veterans, received Lincoln referral services. Over 2,000 of those veterans received direct case management from one of our staff. We supported Boston Public Health Commission mobile vet centers after the Boston Marathon's bombings. We were down at Ground Zero and offering assistance to the community over there. We've increased collaboration in jail diversion and veterans treatment court programs to assist with the opening of the 5 veterans treatment courts. We have a peer in every single one of those, accessing, helping the veterans in those programs. We also provide a battle mind training to first responders, college staff, community providers, HR professionals, medical schools, clerkship, judges, and probation departments, which is training for kind of like a military culture awareness type training. As well as we collaborate with all the various state, federal, local agencies to better connect these veterans with the resources. The one last thing I'll add is we work with all eras, we work with all discharge types. Obviously, depending on the veteran's circumstances, they might be eligible, they might not be eligible for certain benefits. It's our job to navigate that system and connect them and plug them into the right resources that they would be eligible for. And that's just want to thank you for your time and hearing me out on our program with the Department of Veteran Services. Thank you.
No, thank you for being here and the important work that you're doing across the state. We appreciate it. Stephen?
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Steve Croto with the Office of the State Treasurer Veterans Bonus Program. What the Veterans Bonus Program is, it's a bonus program from the state of Massachusetts that awards bonuses to service members that are originally from Massachusetts that served during certain wartime periods. Those wartime periods are World War I, World War II, Korea War, Vietnam conflict, Persian Gulf, and currently the global war on terrorism, September 11, 2001 till present. The older wars, the World War I, World War II, Korean War, a lot of those bonuses have already been, those service members have received most of those bonuses at the time of discharge. There's still a few out there, so we always recommend people to call our office, and we do the research to ensure that they receive their bonus. Vietnam, back in 2010, the law was extended from 1973 to 1975. So recently we found that a lot of those Vietnam veterans have not received their bonus. So we've had an effort to reach out to those. And last year we awarded about $26,000 in Vietnam bonuses, which is a pretty large amount for that time period, seeing how most of them got it when they were discharged. Now the current bonus, the Global War on Terrorism bonus, that's for service September 11, 2001 till present. $500 for 6 months stateside or overseas. $1,000 if the member was deployed to an imminent danger location. It used to be just Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2017, we were able to amend the law to include all imminent danger locations. $250 if the person went to a subsequent deployment overseas, not imminent danger, and $500 if the person deployed a second time to an imminent danger location. We just recently awarded a check for $5,500 to an Army veteran who retired. He was in Iraq, Afghanistan about 7 times. Every other 6 months he was going there. So we were proud to be able to welcome that service member home. Thanks again for allowing me to come here. Our biggest way to get the word out is from word of mouth. So if you know anybody, and I mentioned your son, I'm sure he's eligible, they can apply while they're active duty. All they need is 6 months active service. They're eligible for the $500. And then any other deployments, he can apply. So thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. The information was very informative. Appreciate it. Bill with the VFW.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for inviting me here. My name is Bill LeBeau. I'm the state adjutant to the Veterans of Foreign Wars in Massachusetts. I want to speak a little bit about where the VFW is today versus where it's been. And I think we're on a better track now than we have been in a long time. Last year, our state commander, Eric Segundo, was the first OEF veteran to be heading up a VFW department. That was right here in Massachusetts. Our current state commander, Keith Jackson, who I'm here on behalf of, is also an OIF veteran. At the state leadership level, we have 1 Vietnam veteran, 3 of us are Gulf War, and the rest are all OIF. So the VFW is getting younger in leadership. We also did something remarkable last year. It was the first time in 20 years. Our organization grew in this state. We have more members today than we did a year ago at this time. We're very proud of that. We're going to be working on that going forward. The goal is to continually increase, because right now we have 80,000 eligible VFW veterans in the state, and we have 22,000 members. The thing with the VFW, they have to have been in imminent danger or get a campaign medal, and our organization isn't going to change anytime soon. That said, we know that there's a problem with post. We have the local post issue, which is the younger veterans, they hear from the older veterans, well, it's just a bar, it's a place to hang out. Unfortunately, we even heard that here today. I'm here to push back on that message. We are aggressively going into our posts. We are a congressionally chartered organization, and as such, we're required to do certain things, which is to help fellow veterans and to be patriotic and do things in the community. And if a post isn't doing that, and they're putting a bar first and the post second, we're shutting the post down or fixing the problem. We've done that in and around Boston. Right now, we have approximately 20 active posts in and around Boston, but the ones that are here now today are much healthier than they have been for many, many years. How do we mean by healthy? Well, right now, we reorganized our state service office, which is similar to what the DAV has, if not the same thing, just on a smaller scale. But that smaller scale office based right at the JFK building and across the state with our state service officers, we've now secured $14 million in benefits to disabled veterans just since January. Approximately 20% of that is to Boston area veterans. Our mission, our goal right now for Boston is to bring the veterans that were part of those posts that we've had to shut down over the last 10 years back into the fold. Now, one of the things with the VFW, just because a post shut down doesn't mean that the members disappear. They're still on our at-large rolls. They still get in the magazine. They're still, many of them are life members. They're my life members for life. So we're working on where do we bring them? Do we have posts? We have a lot of posts that don't even have a building. They meet in a different building, but they're still doing the things that fulfill their charter. But we have added new posts. One of them was right here in Boston. We added a post last year, the Northeastern University post, which is a brand new VFW post made up mostly of OEF, OIF, but many Vietnam veterans now that are aware of it are coming into the fold. Through our outreach programs that we're doing, we're looking at organizations, many of them sitting at this table right now. We have a 501c3 foundation that was formed 4 years ago, and through that we're helping to support some of these organizations with the things that they're doing. Through the post where we are on the posts that are active and healthy, they're getting out in the community, and we are getting those younger veterans to come in. The biggest thing with the VFW, it's a place for them to get together, whether it's at a building or at an event. We're finding things for them to do And then we get them to go to home base, and we get them to do different groups and stuff. And we're finding that marriage is getting better between the younger vets and the older vets at the VFW. But I'm here to tell you that the VFW is alive and well. We've been here since 1920, and we are on a strong mission to improve what we're doing for our veteran services throughout the whole state, but especially here in Boston. There's been a lot of things that have happened with some of the posts, but we have some active posts down in Dorchester. Somebody mentioned we have a lot of veterans in Dorchester. We do have a post that we just closed, but if they're going to be a bar only, then they're not really a VFW post, and we're recognizing that. And that's where some of the problems lie. So my hope is that people start understanding the VFW is here. Give us a call. I have a handout that I handed to the council. You can see some of the good works that we're doing. We're doing scholarship drives across the state. We've handed out tens and tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships across the state. We're promoting patriotism in our schools. A lot of our posts, you know, when you see the flags on the telephone poles and the squares are clean and there's flags at the cemetery, a lot of that is VFW members who are doing that through their posts. And a lot of them aren't advertising it, but that's the stuff we're doing. So I want to thank you for the time, and if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is David Hanka. I'm the Veterans Outreach Coordinator for VA Boston Healthcare. And in that role, I represent one of the largest, if not the largest, federal employer in the region, particularly here in the city. And as part of the VA healthcare system, in a sense, I'm representing all of our family of Veterans Affairs services in the area. So as you know, the VA is kind of a tri-component or quad-component organization. If you consider the healthcare organization, which is the biggest dog in the block, we've got 3 big healthcare hospitals that service the Boston and greater Boston area, 5 clinics, et cetera. But you know, we work in conjunction. You know, being the largest employer, the healthcare aspect does provide the biggest footprint, but we work closely in conjunction with our cousins there and the Veterans Benefits Administration, the VBA, right across City Hall Plaza here at the JFK building. Those are the folks that are giving out money, giving out funds to veterans, payments in terms of compensation, disability payments, VA home loans, GI Bill, all those great programs that give to veterans. So when you think of veterans benefits and the things that veterans are receiving monetarily and otherwise, that's coming out of the VBA. Whereas on the healthcare side, we represent this very powerful and very well organized healthcare system that is absolutely tremendous. But we also work in conjunction with Veterans Cemetery Administration, Bourne Cemetery down at the Cape is our footprint there, and then we work with the Boston VA Vet Center, and one of our folks was here from the Vet Center, had to leave a little while ago. So, but those make up the federal footprint for VA services. So obviously we bring a lot to the table. It's a great, what I call a good news story. We're serving about 62,000 veterans alone just here in the Boston healthcare system each year. That's a lot of folks coming in. That's a good news story in the sense that we're able to offer them what we call the best care anywhere. Wonderful book by that title that talks about how the VA is and should be a model for healthcare in America. Point is that the VA is doing it right in terms of medical care. We bring vets in. Personal story in a sense is that as a veteran, I can get an appointment with the same doctor that I have at Mass General Hospital, for example, who also spends time, like a lot of our physicians, duly appointed at a VA facility. I get the same doctor, I can get the same procedure. I'm not paying there are no premiums at the VA, and I'm not paying any of these extra fees and service charges, et cetera. I'm getting exceptionally quality care, and I'm getting it faster at the VA than I can get it in the commercial healthcare agencies. So this is a story I think that just, you know, the press does a wonderful job of holding folks accountable, and the VA has developed and responded to some of these difficulties here. But by and large, the VA has been tremendous and has been a tremendous organization, continues to lead the way in healthcare in this country. So that's kind of the pitch for VA healthcare in a sense. But I will say, you know, we've got, according to recent RAND studies, that veterans rate the VA care system and their treatment of the VA as just as good or far better than what they receive in the commercial care facilities. And personally, on the surveys that we take with our veterans, we've got 85 to 90% of veterans that I speak to, and I speak to a good 1,200 or 1,500 vets a year that are using VA care, and they will tell you that they either are very satisfied with VA care or they absolutely love it. So we have a tremendous care, and this is reflected across the country in a lot of facilities. Some are challenged, and there are different things. But again, as the largest federal agency outside of the Department of Defense, it does have its challenges, but by and large, it's a tremendous care system. So part of the good news story is that we, as we work on our efforts at outreach and connecting with veterans and getting them into care, we have a great military veteran family team. So when we get together in a setting like this, as you can imagine, we're all part of a network. It's almost like being back in your platoon or your squad or your section. You know, all of us, as we meet, we know each of us has our different jobs we all add into this effort. And so the VA would call it, you know, community engagement, community networking, and I like to call it one team, one fight approach. So we get it done in the sense that we have been networked for years, and thankfully with the work that Brighton Marine's been doing with the Greater Boston Coordinated Vet Services, it's clarifying those connections and making it that much more efficient. So it's great that they have stepped up to the plate to do that. And of course, in these efforts, any number of ways that we're reaching out to veterans, but one thing we're doing, we mail to all returning veterans. We work with the Department of Defense, so the VA is getting those addresses, et cetera. So any veteran that's returning, somebody that's coming off of active duty, returned from active duty, we'll send a letter out to them saying, hey, welcome back. You might have heard about this when you were leaving service, but now you're coming back to the hometown. Here's your VA. We're your hometown services. And by the way, we've got a lot of friends in here, the State Department of Career Services, you know, City of Boston, if you're here, the City of Boston Vet Services, all these things. So we try to market everybody as a comprehensive network of care. But just reaching out with mailings, and then, of course, any number of things, the job fairs, the Veterans Expos, even the VetNet newsletter. So Mr. Ng, the director of VA Boston, has been a big proponent of networking and this one team, one fight approach that all of us bring a lot to the table. None of us can get the job done separately that we can do together. So in that regards, I'll just, I'll kind of leave my comments there, but I did want to mention, though, some of our challenges, of course, are getting veterans into the care system, getting a group of people who may or may not be thrilled about utilizing health care, et cetera, but getting to realize that they need this preventive maintenance in military terms, and that's the way I understand health care. So if I look at it in terms of what the government taught me about taking care of equipment and people, and you know, you've got to take care of these preventively, or you will you stand to gain much by doing that. So we push and we work to get veterans to take advantage of this. But our challenge is, one of them is that we are in a hospital-rich environment. There are any number of facilities here in the area, and particularly in this part of Massachusetts and this part of the country. But getting veterans to realize that they could save so much and that they don't have these. They don't have the premiums, et cetera, that they're paying out, that they don't have to be paying that. But the other challenge is for us, particularly in Boston, I think, is the income gap and the income threshold that Congress imposed on the VA and getting veterans to qualify. So, for example, you can only make $50,000 or so as a veteran in the area, or you're not going to be able to. If you're over that amount, it's likely that you won't be able to utilize VA care. So that's an ongoing challenge. But I want to just kind of mention a couple of our great programs at the VA that work very closely with the city, and one of these, of course, is our Women's Veterans programs, and then our Healthcare for Homeless Veterans, both representatives here today. So I'll turn that over to Carolyn Mason-Woolley to.
Sure. Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. My name is Carolyn Mason-Woolley. I am the Women Veterans Program Manager at VA Boston Healthcare System. As was mentioned earlier by Commissioner Sterling, women are the fastest growing segment of the veteran population. About 26,000 women veterans in Massachusetts. Around 9% of all veterans are female. Around 14% of active duty are female, and around around 18% of Reserve and National Guards. So there's a large population of women veterans that are eventually, it's going to get larger because of the higher numbers and higher percentages in the services at this time. In response to this growth, VA is really making an effort to ramp up their services for women veterans, improve the care that we have provided, and making sure that anybody who's working at our VAs recognizes them as veterans and is able to provide the care that they need. But we really can't do it alone, and hence being here and being part of this this community. In response, VA Boston has developed a really full spectrum of care for women. As a woman veterans program manager, it's my job to oversee sort of the umbrella of all services to women when they walk in the front door. So looking at outreach to them, access to care, making sure it's a welcoming environment, and then developing programmatic and clinical care. So part of the services that we provide include primary care, gynecology, mental health, inpatient, residential, and outpatient care, women's imaging clinics, maternity care coordination, and so on and so forth. We've developed some very specialized programs for women here at VA Boston, and we're a national referral site for our acute psychiatry wing down in Brockton, our PTSD and substance abuse program that's specifically for women down in the Brockton campus, Trust House, which is our transitional residence, which is in a neighborhood in Jamaica Plain, and our women's trauma recovery team, which is an outpatient women's mental health program in Jamaica Plain. We also are home to one of the sites of the Women's Health Sciences Division of the National Center for PTSD, and a huge amount of the research that goes on having to do with women veterans stems from that program there. Our services are among the most expansive in the VA for women, and our outcomes from the care really rival any of our private non-VA care providers here in Massachusetts. For example, we encourage women veterans who have mental health problems to use VA. We looked at a research program recently that showed women with the suicide rate for women who are engaged in the VA over the last 10 years dropped about 2.5%. Those that don't use VA increased about 80%. So it's a protective factor for them to be participating in care, particularly mental health care at the VA. As Commissioner Sterling mentioned previously, Massachusetts Women Veterans Network is one of the strongest in the country. We focus on connection, community, access to care and services, and that program really helps to reach out to women veterans. But as we go forward, I think some of the important things that we could ask for your assistance with are recognizing women veterans as veterans, continuously highlighting our strong women veterans leaders, such as the Commissioner, reaching out to women who often don't identify as veterans, don't turn out for meetings like this, and are struggling to return to civilian life, being both mom, wife, caregiver for an elderly parent, and employee or student. Really mixed roles. And we also really continue to focus on housing for low and lower middle income classes for women veterans, particularly those with children or those escaping domestic violence, our elder vets and our student vets, very challenging populations. So I thank you for your time here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Dollard. I oversee programs to help veterans experiencing homelessness or attempting to prevent homelessness. I feel very fortunate to work for an organization that views health care not as just what happens out in the hospital grounds, but in the community, really understanding the environment of the veteran, ensuring their safety, ensuring employment, and most importantly to me, ensuring housing. So in accordance with what Colonel Henke had shared, I really appreciate the team that we have in this room today. We worked very hard as part of the Homes for the Brave initiative, working with Commissioner Sterling, working with Sheila Dillon and her team at D&D, helping to find housing for over 1,000 veterans in the last few years. So it's really a collaborative effort. We do have the opportunity to oversee the HUD-VASH program. I did want to point out, as was pointed out earlier, some excellent models of HUD-VASH housing here in the room. We've been able to work with New England Center and Home for Veterans to establish 35 units of project-based housing. We're working with Brighton Marine to establish 25 additional units of housing above and beyond the 102 units of mixed income housing they're creating. So just want to thank these partners and just wanted to point out that our #1 need is the establishment of more affordable housing. There's more vouchers that we can gain, more Section 8 vouchers, but without that affordable housing and landlords willing to employ veterans, house veterans, weren't able to utilize those vouchers. I just wanted to point out a few other specialized services we have through the VA. We also participate with the Honorable Judge Eleanor Sennett for the Veterans Court. We believe strongly that there's a number of barriers that we can assist veterans overcome as they try to maintain their housing or come out of homelessness, whether it's working with DOR, Department of Revenue, whether that's working with a legal team to assist the veteran, whether it's helping them to gain employment. We see each of these barriers as opportunities for us to help the veteran get on the path that they'd like to see, and that includes, of course, permanent housing. And finally, I just wanted to point out that we have a number of contractual relationships with some of the providers in the room. SSVF, which is supportive services for veterans and families, money that goes to the veterans and their families in order to prevent homelessness, whether that's a couple months of back rent, whether that's a first month's rent. And then we also do have a number of emergent housing contracts, so no veteran who qualifies for VA services, at least in the Boston area, wouldn't be afforded housing immediately. So I appreciate your time today.
No, thank you, Chris. And we also have Rebecca is here. Rebecca?
Okay, my legal name is Ralph John McDonald. My preferred name is Rebecca Jean.
Okay.
I am a citizen right here in Boston. I represent Vet2Vet Boston. We're an organization that works closely with the VA. We run various support groups. I know you should have a packet, I hope.
Yeah, I do.
Within the packet, you're going to find 2 brochures. One of them is for all the groups we have. The other one is a specialty for the transgender veterans or LGBT. I run that program along with my roommate, who's my co-facilitator. We sit there and we're just trying to make everybody aware we're here. We're here to help. One of our biggest problems is not getting it, it's getting information out. Our other biggest problem, we don't have the ability to run support groups in the community, especially at night, because we found that if we can get away from the VA, because they're afraid that you're going to take notes, it's going in your records, but guess what? It's not. They are not allowed in our room. They give us a room, they sponsor us, they help us. What's said in our room stays there, point blank. There is no reason for anybody to write anything down, unless you want to give me an email address. The Women's Veterans group we have right now is active in Brockton on the 1st and 3rd Thursdays from 11 to 12. That group is going fairly well. The average attendance is right around 7 to 12, which is great. That's one of the better ones. PTSD, TBI, there's a whole list of them if you read the brochure. We're supposed to have a women's group in JP. Right now, we're having a very hard time recruiting volunteers to facilitate these meetings. It's not always easy getting somebody to sit up and actually realize when you're in our meeting, there is no VA employees in the room. It's run to the point where what is said there stays there. I don't care what anybody else says. You're not coming in my room as an employee, period. We get them to open up. We can get them to talk more. And then that might make one of our clinicians' job a lot easier because we got them starting to talk. And to me, that's very, very important. Like I say, I run the transgender group. We meet between Brockton and Jamaica Plain. Jamaica Plain is the first and third, and Brockton is the second and fourth Thursdays. So, I mean, we do a pretty good job there. We try to get the message out. The VA is not military. I've talked to quite a few transgender people in the area. They're afraid that if they come to VA and come out of the closet, they're going to be stigmatized and chastised, which is not true. The VA has a wonderful treatment program for the transgenders, not just the transgender, LGBT period. Mike here has been excellent. I've had little or no problems at all since 1980. We have a new group we started, first group after hours. It's in West Roxbury. That's going to meet the first and third Mondays at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Our directors have given us a room right in Building 3. So we're going to be there after hours. That's our first after hours group, period. We're here. We're trying to help. We just want to let everybody know we can help. Because we've been there, we've done that. And one of our mottos is each one, teach one. Wait, I can keep on getting that screwed up. Each one, reach one, teach one. So everyone we can reach, we can actually teach. And unfortunately, I was supposed to have a staff here. I shouldn't say staff, but other people from the board, and they could not make it for various reasons. There's 2 business cards in the packet. One is for the Vet-to-Vet LGBT group. It has information for contacts and stuff on the back of it. We have a website in the works, which will be vet2vet.lgbt. The second card is for one of our chairmen of the board. If anybody needs to contact for more information than I can give, his contact information will be on that card. Okay. We are a nonprofit. We are a 501c3. Fundraising may not be our strong suit, but we're not really been organized or incorporated maybe 5 or 6 years. Okay. And it takes time. One of the things that the city has that I participated in was that town hall for the LGBT or the transgender veterans. I have to give the commissioner my thanks because I have never seen a city, a town do something like that. And yes, I am a Vietnam-era veteran. Never served in combat. But I was at the tail end when it didn't matter. You military, You were chastised by all the civilians, but we make it through. The more people we can reach, the more people we can help, and in turn, helping the VA treat that person even more, even better. I can't really think of anything else to say.
No, thank you, Rebecca, and I agree with you. I had the opportunity to attend the same town hall, and I also want to say thank you to Commissioner Sterling and Mayor Walsh for helping sponsor it and organize it as well. Thank you for your comments. With that, I just want to ask if there's anyone else that would like to offer any comments. We have a microphone on the left, a microphone on the right. This is public comments if anyone's interested in coming down and weighing in. Again, I just want to say, okay.
I'd just like to, I know that everybody here in this room does, yeoman's work and really works hard for veterans, but I just want to recognize the SAVE team. That's a really important program within the Department of Veteran Services that was started years ago. And I've sent at least a half a dozen veterans through, to Dave Odenweller, Gabe Nutter, whether Don Purrington, like those guys do important work. Their workload's enormous. They drop whatever they're doing and they go and they address the issues with critically at-risk veterans, whether it's in the city, a homeless, I've sent them to somebody that I met in the street that was homeless, drug addicted. They just drop what they're doing and they go out and they search for them. And they try to bring them in for treatment through the VA healthcare system or to one of their partner programs. But I just want to recognize, even with the Veterans Court, like the workload's huge and, they don't get recognized enough. And it's a wonderful program. And if the city ever wanted to start something similar, that's the standard. That's the model that they should be going off of. I just want to say thanks.
That's good information. Thanks, Jesse. And I just want to conclude by thanking everybody for being here. I know it was a long hearing, but I think the information you provided to the public was exceptional. And this information will travel on cable television and people might pick it up and might give you a call. So I want to thank you for being here, for advocating for veterans and for military families. I just want to say thank you to my colleagues, Tim McCarthy, Matt O'Malley, Michelle Wu, Ayanna Presley, Lydia Edwards, Frank Baker, and Michael Flaherty also gave me a call. But I want to thank especially the veterans organizations for providing exceptional services to returning veterans, for our homeless veterans that are in the city. We have a tremendous champion in Mayor Walsh and Governor Baker, and I think our city and our state are leading the way across the country and treating our homeless veterans with respect and dignity that they earned. Our VA is doing exceptional work. As Councilor O'Malley mentioned, 2 of them are in his district, and one of the clinics in my district on Causeway Street. And I use the facility in West Roxbury and Jamaica Plain, and for me, the VA health system has been excellent. I've been enrolled in the VA health system for about 6 years, and I'm so happy with it. And so, I see the dedicated nurses, doctors, and staff every day, and volunteers as well. The volunteers are so happy to be there that it makes it actually fun going to the hospital at times. I want to say thank you to the New England Center for Homeless Veterans for their outstanding work for so many years in this city. The home base program for what you're doing in providing quality, compassionate mental health care, not just for the veteran, but also for military families as well. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone for being here. I have an open door policy. If anyone wants to come in and talk to me about any veterans issues, if I could be of any assistance to any veteran, please let me know, regardless of what the issue is or regardless if the person is in my district or not. I'm here to help. I'm proud to have served 23 years in the Navy, and I'm honored to be with you guys and women today. So I just want to say thank you, and this meeting will be closed. Thank you.